The purpose of the speech is to share some aspect of my experience at a networking group. So basically what I was supposed to do was prepare for and then attend a networking event and then give this speech about the experience. So before I go into my experience of the networking event, I'm going to first talk a little bit about what networking is, and then I'll give you some of my experience. So the first thing to understand about networking is that it is the process of interacting with other people to exchange information and to develop contacts to create mutually beneficial relationships. The key word there is relationships. A lot of people network to sell, but I urge you to start networking to build relationships, because when you build relationships, if there is a sell there, it will come naturally. So some of the benefits to networking are that you'll establish new contacts, meet people maybe you wouldn't have met otherwise. You can build and strengthen relationships through networking. You can receive and give fresh perspectives, advice, and support, because we all have different minds. So sometimes when we get together, we can give each other different ideas. We can create collaborations and partnerships through networking. It gives us exposure. The more that you network, the more that people start recognizing your name. In fact, once upon a time, I used to walk into different networking events and be known as, "You're Barbara Carr. I've heard about you," or "I've seen you." And I felt like such a celebrity in this little town of mine. But that came through lots of networking, from getting my face out there, getting my name out there. And then you create raving fans. As you guys see, I have a guest here, Angela. She's one of my raving fans. When you network enough, you get fans who want to be part of everything that you do, because they see the benefit in what you're doing. And so Angela has become more than just a raving fan of mine. She is one of my good friends now, and I know she'll be able to introduce herself here in a little bit. But you create this persona when you network enough and when you do it effectively, of the person that other people want to be around and the person that people want to follow. So I encourage you to network, but I hope to give you some very effective tips in doing so today. So who would be somebody who would network? Well, first of all, if you're a business owner, you need to network to grow your business. If you're not a business owner, but you're a professional, right? Like many of the people on this call, you guys are very high-level professionals, you would be networking. Parents would network, students even network, Toastmasters would network, right? Like Toastmasters in itself is a networking opportunity. So some of the places that you can network. There are social events, so you may have been to an after-hours event, maybe a summer market festival, your children's ball games. Those are all social events that you could be networking and meeting new people. Even if you're not in business, it's still good to meet new people and build relationships. So those are some personal places you could be networking. Also community service events. There are groups like Rotary, Kiwanis, there's volunteer projects you could get involved with. So those are some ways that you could also be networking with people. And the great thing about networking in these instances are that you're networking with people with the same interest as you, right? So if it's at your kid's ball game, well, they also have a kid who plays ball. If it's at a volunteer event, well, you're networking with somebody else who enjoys volunteering, right? So these are people that you probably would get along well with. In professional settings, there are business conferences, B&I groups, networking groups, chambers, Toastmasters, things like that you can get around other people who are in the professional industry that you might be in, or maybe not even the same industry, but the same type of work, right? Like maybe everyone who works from home. From what I understand, you guys are all part of the courts in one way or the other. And so you guys have things in common. One of the newer things that you guys are learning about with networking now is online networking. So before COVID, I could guess that your Toastmasters meetings were not on Zoom. They were probably in person. But now they're on Zoom, and you can network on Zoom as a one-on-one. So I can have a meeting, just Carlos and I would be a one-on-one. It could be a group like what we're doing right now. There are also events called speed networking on Zoom now, which I had an opportunity to participate in. And that is the experience I'm going to share with you today. By a show of hands, has anyone participated in speed networking? Kind of just wave at me if you have. All right, so from what I can see, it doesn't, nobody on my screen I can see has. So this should be fun then. Let me tell you about speed networking. And if you'd like a link to it, I'm not the one who runs it, but just reach out to me afterwards. I'll be happy to share the link because it's really cool. So anyway, this guy, his name is Gerald. He created what's called speed networking on Zoom. And so basically you register and then you get a Zoom link, just like what you have for this. And you get on here and there's dozens of people. The first one I attended, I think there were 52 people on the call. So it was really cool, 52 new opportunities. And he does what's called a breakout room. So after he gives a little bit of an introduction, he separates people into their own room. So you're still part of this event, the Zoom event, but you're in a little room with maybe 4 or 5 other people, right? So there's all these little rooms on the Zoom room, and so I'm in a group with 4 or 5 people, and Gerald gives discussion questions that he wants you to discuss. So for instance, it might say, what is something new that you've learned during this pandemic, right? And so people were sharing things like, I didn't know how to use Zoom until now. For me, I learned that there are more people that don't have websites or social media presence that should. That's what I do as a profession, is I do marketing. And so people started coming out of the woodworks like, I need a website, I need social media, because now that's the only way people can find you. And so my business started booming because of COVID. And I started learning that, wow, I knew there was a lot of people out there that needed this. I didn't realize how many didn't have it at all. And so I was very blessed, and I got a lot of business during that time. I did some free marketing tips that I gave to people during that time so that they could market their business and stay visible even during this pandemic. And so the questions you would answer in your little small group, and then after I think it was about 10 or 15 minutes, he would switch the groups. And then you'd find yourself in a new group with 4 or 5 new people that you got to have a new question with. Maybe the question was something like, is there anything that you started doing during this time that you're going to continue doing when the world goes back to normal? Or, and it wasn't all related to COVID. So it might be, what is your ideal client? Who can we look for on your behalf? And sometimes the question was as simple as like, who are you? Right? And some people, when asked, who are you? Some people describe who they are on a personal level. Some people go into who they are as a business. Some people go into what they're passionate about. And it's really interesting when you have such an open-ended question, to hear the responses that people give. So I met so many new people, and I enjoyed it very, very much that I started doing it every week. He does this every Thursday. So every week I go on there and I'm part of this group. But one of the things that I quickly learned was that you don't have enough time to really get to know anybody on that speed session. So what I started doing was making sure to get, Gerald already encourages everyone to share their LinkedIn link so that you can connect on LinkedIn afterwards. But I would always make sure that when I'm in a Zoom room, in the private small room, that I would request that everybody post their LinkedIn link so that we could connect with each other afterwards. So, and I would make sure to do that. And not only would I connect with them, but I would follow up afterwards. So here's some of the things after doing this networking group several weeks in a row that I've developed to make the most out of your networking. The first thing is to have a plan or a goal. What do you want to accomplish? So after this 1 hour or 2 hour, however long it is, after this event is done, whether that is in person or on Zoom or on a phone call or whatever it is, after this event is done, what do I want to accomplish? Do I hope to have met 10 people, or do I want to have met just one really specific person that can help me at what I need help with right now? Maybe I'm looking for administrative assistant. That might be what I'm looking for on this event. That was never one of my goals. I have an administrative assistant, but I was just sharing that as an example. Maybe I want to meet somebody else who's in the marketing industry to collaborate with. So knowing what your goal is before you go into that meeting helps you then to focus on what you're trying to achieve. So if I know that that's what I'm looking for, if I'm looking for another marketing person to collaborate with, whenever someone says something about marketing, it's going to ring a bell in my head. Barbara, you need to get her contact information. She might be somebody you could collaborate with, right? Because it's impossible to measure success if you don't have a goal and a starting point. Right? So you won't know if you've succeeded in your goal if you don't know what the starting point is and where you're trying to go. So make sure that maybe you're trying to get, since everybody's sharing LinkedIn links on here, maybe your goal is to have 5 new LinkedIn connections when this is done, or 20, depending on how ambitious you are. But then after you've reached that goal, you need to know what you want to do with those people afterwards. So now that you've connected with them on LinkedIn, after meeting them for a couple of minutes, what is the next step? So for me, my next step was to send them a message and see if I could get them on my calendar for a one-on-one meeting. And so on the one-on-one, that's when I'd be able to ask them more questions and find out truly if we're a good fit to continue to network with each other, or possibly even work with each other. And so knowing those goals and knowing your end objective helps you to be more effective when you're networking. So make sure that you identify who your ideal connection is at the event and what your goal is. Make sure that you practice what you would call your elevator pitch or your 30-second commercial. But I always encourage people to also practice the who I really am speech, because we all go into, well, this is what I do for a living, and this is what I do for business, and you go into it, but then there's a time when I just want to know, who are you as a person? Like, are you a mother? Are you a wife? I love that Sonia shared that in her icebreaker, because it helped me get to know her on such a personal level. And I love that she shared that she's faith-based. I also am. So what I received from Sonia's speech is, this is someone I want to connect with even after this. I'm grateful to have been on here. So if my goal going into this was just to share my speech with you guys, well, great, I've accomplished it. But if my goal was to meet somebody else that I could connect with on a deeper level even after this, well, look at that, I've achieved that as well. So knowing what your goal is going into the meeting will help you achieve that goal before the meeting's done. Otherwise, you just walk away knowing a bunch of people, maybe having business cards or LinkedIn links, and not knowing what to do next. So having that game plan in place is going to be most helpful here. And then go in with the intent to help other people, to give rather than to receive. So don't just go in and start handing out your business cards or throwing in your link or anything like that. Do that when somebody asks for it. And ask for links and business cards if you actually plan to follow up with them. Because if you're never going to follow up, it's almost useless for you to even ask for my business card. It's a waste of my business card if you just put it in a pile with other business cards. Or if you just connect with me on LinkedIn and we never have a conversation. That's not useful to either of us. So make sure that you follow up after you network. I also like to say, give more than you take, and listen more than you talk. I actually just did a presentation right before this one on communication etiquette, and that was a big takeaway there, is to listen more than you talk. People really appreciated that. Help others build their network. If you know somebody, when somebody says, I'm looking for XYZ, if you know somebody who provides X, Y, and Z, don't be shy about making that connection. Just because it's not you that offers XYZ doesn't mean that you shouldn't connect the person who could do it. So truly try to help other people grow their network just as you're growing yours. And then, I've been looking for the timer, and I'm not sure if I'm missing the timer or if I'm looking at the right person. I don't know how I am on time, so if I go over, just interrupt. What was that? Okay, so I want to give you guys some action steps to think about when you go into your next networking event. So first thing, think about what strategies can you use to network more efficiently? Or do you have the opportunity to network online? Even if you can't meet in person right now because of what's going on in our world, how can you still continue to network virtually? And how can you turn your skills, your knowledge, and your hobbies into relevant networking talking points, right? So rather than just talking about your business or your job all the time, what can you use in your personal life that would be of interest to other people, right? If you're at a mom's group, it's almost natural to talk about your kids, right? If you're at a ball game, it's almost natural to talk about the game. So use that in business networking and professional networking as well. And then what kind of strategies could you use to continue to maintain contact with the people that you meet even after the networking is over? So those are some things that I highly encourage you to think about so that you can network most effectively. And I do network regularly. I also teach on networking. I'm really excited to network with you guys here. I know that we don't have too much time to get to know each other other than the speeches and the table topics, but feel free to connect with me on social media because I'd love to stay connected with you guys, and I hope that I brought you some value through this.